think the Chamber of Commerce is going to, and I'm the president of the Chamber of Commerce, so I should have also said that in my introduction. I haven't really discussed this as a group with my board, but we have a board meeting next Tuesday, so, and I think we'll just get around, and I've talked to a couple of restaurants in town, and, so far, nobody, I think this is a good step, because I think anybody who goes, as you all have talked about, anybody who goes through the process of opening a restaurant in Montgomery County and all the stuff they got to go through, and somebody can just show up, and obviously for the public health safety, I think this is a good thing. I should have prefaced my initial comments with that. I'm just trying to add some clarification. I guess the only last comment I had was whether produce stands, I'm not sure if those are intended to be, but they're not really called out, but I don't know if that's considered a food truck. This is a vehicle truck cart with food or drink. I mean, I guess it would be, but you might want to clarify that. I mean, there are not that many. I mean, there historically have been produce stands in town, off and on through different periods, but I don't. You might want to.
So, I think several mornings on Saturdays or something. Sometimes people set up.
Yeah, and you also say special events are exempted, so I get that. But if somebody sets up a, corn stand on, the old Highs parking lot. Is that a food truck? I don't know. I mean, it would seem like it is based on the description at the top, but I just ask that by way of clarification. Again, just to sort of tighten up the language as you forward this on to the commissioners whenever, assuming that's the next step for you guys. So, other than that, I think it does, it does a good job of taking something now which is completely unregulated and putting some structure on it. And I'll try to talk to other restaurants and get more comments. I mean, the one restaurant they did talk to, that comment was that they didn't really have a problem with food trucks. I was just sort of expecting restaurants to say, we don't want food trucks because it's competition, but I talked to Barb at Cugini's, and she was kind of like, her approach was more is better, brings more people into town.
Yeah.
Which I thought was an interesting take on it. So anyway, thank you for your time.
Did the food,
comment.
We have two regular food trucks. Did they respond or have comments?
Not that I received any. I think one may be here this evening.
Huh?
I think one may be here this evening.
Oh, okay. All right. Great.
So anyway, okay. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Anyone else want to comment on the agenda items? We have master plan, food trucks, and chickens. All right. Any announcements from Wade or John?
Well, the only thing is I met with a audiovisual guy that today he's going to get us a price for replacing all this stuff in here so we don't have these faux pas going on.
Excellent. All right. So now we can move on to the approval of minutes. Since I was not present at the last meeting, I guess you have to.
I will motion to approve the minutes. Can we hear him?
Martin, can you hear us?
Can you second? Are you okay with the minutes?
Yes,
All right.
I'll second. No, you need,
Yes.
yep, you got it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Minutes for June 15th are approved. Let's move on to new business. We have the chicken ordinance request. And I thought we do have someone who wants to speak with us today.
Yes, we do. This is Elizabeth. You want to come on up? Introduce yourself, please.
Sure, hi.
Hi.
I'm Elizabeth Carpenter. I do have the proposal that I wrote up. Do you want me to hand that out to you?
Yeah, is that the one we got on the email? I think you forwarded us attachments. Yeah.
Oh, so you have a copy? This is based on the Backyard Chicken Caucus, which was recently,
Thank you.
very recently, if you want, you can pass this around. Recently, Baltimore County passed a zoning change that I thought applied very well to us. I also have a couple of handouts here. It's very interesting. They went through a huge process, and they wanted to debunk some of the myths of chicken keeping and help people understand that a lot of people's fears about it is really based on, their fear or ignorance and not on science. So
Thank you.
these are some of the questions about whether or not they attract rodents and here, And whether, they carry salmonella and all of those things that people raise as being concerns and help to debunk some of those myths. This is also a survey of laws, various laws, not just in the state of Maryland, but around the country. There's been a very growing trend to turn over these bans on chicken keeping. And I'm just very encouraged by that, so I was hoping you would read through that.
Okay.
And-
Actually, I'm gonna give this, can you sign in on this?
Sure. Yes. So I'm really here just to share with you this proposal and also possibly to, answer questions that you have about it. What I'm proposing is very conservative in terms of, there would be a permit application process. And not every town does this. I've lived in 3 states where we've kept chickens, and I've never had to fill out a permit. But I'm thinking that for the purpose of this town and it being new, that maybe it would be appropriate, and it would be a source of revenue for the town, and it would also keep things more regulated. And also there's definitely a lot of, I don't know how to say it, but just in terms of the size of the chicken coop and setbacks and all of those things, there's a lot of particular details that I've added into there that I thought would be helpful for you to look at. Let me just finish putting this out.
So I don't know if you're aware, this has come across this board 3 times? I think once in
Yes,
2015,
I'm aware.
once in 2018. So we've kind of, can you keep it up there in case anybody else comes up and talks? So I know our purpose tonight is to hear discussion and stuff. We can't have too much of a deep discussion because we want to do it with the full board.
Okay, of course.
Because, we'll probably want to actually do something this time around, right?
Yeah.
3rd time around.
Sure.
Because it seems like, I think in the past, this has come up, people have come to the board, and then we have a follow-up meeting, and no one shows up in support of it, so we're like, well, let's just keep it as is. Is that kind of how you remember it, Wade? And,
There were different things that came into play with it, but
yeah, and about, staffing, how much input is this going to increase town staff duties and stuff like, because right now it's kind of like I know people in town have chickens, and it only comes a topic of concern when a neighbor has a concern,
Right,
and says,
complaint-based enforcement.
what's that?
Complaint-based.
Yeah. So, but it probably is time to have something.
Absolutely. I mean, what I'm providing you with is a lot of information that was based on 10 years of work. Cheryl Armstrong was one of the leaders in this organization called the Backyard Chicken Caucus for Baltimore County. She's been one of my main contacts because she's already done the work. And I
Yeah.
feel like, why do I need to reinvent the wheel when she's done so much amazing work with her team? And, it really did become a groundswell of, people who were either already keeping them and were chicken outlaws, in their neighborhood with this underground activity, or people
Yeah.
who, just wanted to do it and wanted to play by the rules.
Yeah.
So I just feel like we need to look at the science and the facts and help people who don't understand, chicken keeping, backyard chicken keeping, and responsible chicken keeping, with the idea of you're not keeping roosters, you're not breeding chickens, right? You're just keeping hens, a few of them, so that you can grow some of your own food.
Do you suggest having a thing about roosters?
Yes, I suggest that you don't have roosters in town.
How come?
Well, because they make a lot of noise and they can be aggressive.
Okay.
I love roosters. If I had a 2+ acre parcel of land, I would keep them. But
Yeah.
in town, I just think it becomes too much of a problem. And then you also get into the breeding and fertilized eggs, and it just starts to get a little bit, it just complicates things. And by keeping just hens, when I lived in Westport, Connecticut, it was just, you keep hens, you don't keep roosters
Okay.
in town. And the same when I lived in Los Angeles. It was, you keep hens and not roosters unless you have a lot of land.
Yeah. So I guess it'd be the same, right now, there is no code or enforcement, but if someone complained about roosters, if we had this in place, we could say, hey, well, in writing, you can't have roosters in town and
Right,
stuff.
right,
Okay.
correct.
Do you have anything you want to add to discussion?
I have so much.
Do you want to save it for next meeting with all the board members?
I think so. I
Okay.
think so. Maybe we'll find that binder between now and then.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because Lexi came to the board before she was a planning member petitioning to get this done.
Great.
So, and you did a lot of work
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
So I think that's where, unless other people want to share discussion, because the other members will listen to the Zoom
Sure.
recording, and
I mean, I
Wade
think
has sent
this,
us all this stuff.
this is so beautifully done, and the other members will, of course, get this too. Like, this really lays out a nice case.
Yeah, this is all Cheryl's work. It's not my work. I don't want to plagiarize here. I just think that it helps to help people become more educated and understand the myths versus the facts of backyard chicken keeping.
Yep.
That this is a wonderful hobby, and usually chicken keepers are stewards of the earth. They're wonderful neighbors because they keep a beautiful garden, and they're respectful and kind, and they love animals. I mean, what's not to love there?
Yeah. So, Wade, I guess our job is, and your job is, since the request has come forward, we start discussing next month about how to write this up, and then we give it to the commissioners, right? And that's when people will say, I don't want chicken ordinances, but we don't have to deal with all that. That's for the commissioners to decide, right? We just have to write it up and draft it and give it to them.
Well, you can decide it's not worth going forward, and it wouldn't happen at all.
Okay.
And then if you decide you want to do it, I think you would just say, we'd like to see this happen, and then Wade and I would write something up to let you critique it, like we're doing with the food trucks. And
Okay.
then you would say, yep, this is what we'd like to see, and then it would get put in an ordinance and go to the commission.
Okay.
And they would have public hearings, because we were talking about changing the zoning.
Yep.
So it'd be at their level.
So, and we should do that at the next meeting. Make that decision.
Yes.
Well, hold on. Go ahead, Martin.
I can't hear all that well, but Wade, this is a question for Wade and Jay. When we give a recommendation to the board of the commissioners, are we going to, like, do we have to give them, like, a set of guidelines we recommend, like, here's the rules we recommend, and, like, write up, like, kind of the details? Or are we, at this point, just saying, like, here's an ordinance, let's pass it, and then we do the details afterwards? How does that work?
I think you all would, at some upcoming meeting, would decide that you want to move forward or you don't want to move forward. That would be your initial discussion. And then we would come up with the details, because our details would be to implement it. So if you don't want to do it, we wouldn't have time to do that. And then you'd come back to the details, just like the food trucks. You'd have that in front of you. And then you'd say, yep, we're good with this. And then we would write it up in ordinance form and take it to the commissioners. And then they would go with it from there.
Very good.
Okay?
Thank you.
I definitely think that it's come up enough times in the last just even like 5 to 10 years that it should be addressed.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of the hesitation, like you've said, is just based on misinformation or assumptions, incorrect assumptions. 4 chickens are probably less dirty than a single dog.
Very true.
So,
Very
and I know a little bit about dogs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that it's probably time for something to happen here. And I look forward to seeing you again soon.
Absolutely.
So, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
So I guess that'll be our move. So next month, the rest of the board will decide, hey, let's move forward with this
Okay.
or not, and then,
Okay,
All right.
thank you. Thank you
Thanks.
for your time. I appreciate it.
yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
So that was new business. Now let's go to old business. You said there's someone here to talk about the food truck. We have comprehensive plan first, but do you want to?
If people want to speak about the food truck, they should have spoke during public comment, unless you want to take some testimony now. But I think that since we have representatives here that are on the clock for the town, we might want to work them through.
Okay.
I want to be let in also on the Zoom.
Okay, good idea. All right, so we're going to talk about the comprehensive plan. And let me let
Lauren, join us.
Lauren, yep.
And I'll just scroll with this on the screen up there as we go along.
Now, I have some, I think you posted these on the site, some of the handouts we had with the comment summary.
Yes.
And that, I do have hard copies here if anybody wants, or if it's needed for anyone in attendance. I don't know if you just want to
Hey,
set these
Lauren,
on the side.
this is Kevin. Can you hear me?
Hi there, I can.
Hey.
Can you hear me?
You
Yes.
guys like a hard copy, or are you good?
Well,
with
we
the-
kind of have an old-fashioned Zoom here because we're having technical difficulties with the big screen. So I'm just
leave
gonna
one for my
put my
son.
laptop and face it towards the audience and stuff.
And these are
and-
for anyone.
You know, we have your partner here, so
Okay, thank you.
I only made
I'm just gonna
so
turn
many,
around,
I didn't
okay? And let me know if
what
you
attendance we'd have.
Sounds good.
so.
need any, just holler because I can't see the screen. If you need me to do anything or.
You're doing a great job.
Yeah, pardon me too.
Is that what I said?
And I guess, yeah, talking to the mic so maybe it'll pick up.
Yeah, so,
this-
well, thank you. I'm Ray Morbeck with Wallace Montgomery. We're helping you guys out with different elements of the comprehensive plan and some of the outreach effort. On Zoom, as you guys heard, is Lauren Good, who's our project manager and lead planner for this effort. And we wanted to give you guys an update on some of the activities that had happened back in May.
Okay.
And some of the feedback we've been getting, and then sort of we'll talk a little bit of the next steps where we're going with starting to work on actual chapters of the plan and pulling materials together. But a big part of that up front, of course, was getting some public feedback and some outreach efforts, and to hear from the community members and others on things that they think about Poolsville, what they feel are strong now, and where they would like to see things in the future. So back in May,
Can I pause you?
sure.
Because that screen's not working. Is there another paper copy?
Yeah. You can, I handed one out, but I can give you this one if you want. You can take that
Oh.
one. You can take that one because I can see the screen.
Okay, all right, thanks. I'll give it back. Or can I have this to scribble on?
Huh?
Can I scribble on
Yep.
this?
It's yours, you can keep it.
Okay, thanks.
So.
Sorry.
And I do got to apologize, we had the event on May 14th, I believe it was. I apologize, I wasn't there, it was my son's graduation, so I hope that was his college graduation. I hope that was a good enough excuse, but Lauren and our team was
good.
there. And we had a pretty good turnout, so if you go, oh, thanks. And we were sort of charged of, the first slide there that Wade's pulling up was, you know, the goal of this event was really to engage the community, to spark some of that interest in the plan itself, and to really start to get input and feedback from the residents and the different members here, the commissioners, and really just having some activities to get a feel of what people like, what they'd like to see, get to know the different elements of the plan, what's all in it, because it has everything from transportation to housing to environment, you know, all within there, get them an understanding of the different elements of the plan. So we were pleased to have that event. Got lucky with weather. I think it was questionable going into it. They were calling for rain all day, but it turned out pretty good that day. And we got about over 70 residents and various stakeholders, as well as some of you all as well at the event. As you can see, we did hand out some of these bigger maps, so you see it bigger. It's kind of hard to see on the screen up there. But one of the events we always do for this is we want to see what sort of representation we're getting. So the map that's here and has the dots on it was actually a copy of the board that was at the meeting to sort of give a where do you live, where do you work, and where do you shop. So we sort of get a feel of what representation we get. And you can see from the map, we got pretty good representation from throughout the town, as well as the area, and really some, you know, to really see. One of the things there is to make sure we're not missing somebody within the community, and if we are, we want to then do other outreach to target those areas and make sure we're getting their feedback and input. So we had really good participation from that side. If you go to the next slide. As part of the event, there were a series of stations, and I'm basically going to walk through some of the things we heard from those stations in a sort of a summary here. and one of the first ones was, how do you envision Poolsville today? What do you think of when you think of Poolsville, and what does it mean? And, we put one of these word collages together really off of what you hear, and it's usually bigger words and smaller words based on what you hear more, what you hear less. Well, this was pretty even on sort of the comments we're seeing, and you see sort of the words that people put down there as far as, peaceful and charming, a healthy community, it's close-knit, a small town, quaint, caring, beautiful, safe, things you like to hear about your town, which is good to hear, versus, congested and noisy or whatever. So you got some nice thing about what you see with Poolsville today and what people feel about the community and the town. But of course, we like to, on the next slide, go into, well, how do you see the future of Poolsville and where things going? And you see some of the similar words, but there are some concerns that came out through this exercise. There is this, people want to see it more as a destination, versus, be it a bedroom community or whatever. But also this concern of overdevelopment was coming up, that you're losing the character of the community in the future if things continue to overdevelop and that end. But also wanting to see it, and you see the other words there of sustainable, having this local presence, make it a thriving community. You see some of that feedback. So these are good things for us to sort of hear, get people in their own words, what they're thinking, and what we want to be pulling together as we start writing the plan of really where we want Poolsville to be in the next 10 years and what things may have to be put in place to try and keep it and not allow some of these other things to happen as concerns of the community. If you go to the next slide, this is one that we always love, and I think it helps you all and the commissioners. For those who didn't participate, we basically give you your own budget. We know funds are limited and what you can do within the town and the community, and we called this the do-it-yourself budget. So you're given certain denominations of dollars, and you're given a series of categories. And you see here our categories that were provided, and there were buckets for people to put their money in and spend it where they feel it should be spent, and not where somebody may want to send it. Where do you really have the need? Where do you think the money should go? And what came out from that, you see here, is that focus on downtown center development. Really was a big one, where most of the money ended up when we added all this up and counted what was in the thing. And this really goes from top to bottom. Water and sewer improvements or expansion. You've got protecting the natural environment, additional trails, road improvements, park improvements, affordable housing, or town buildings themselves. Were these different categories we were seeing, and this is what we were getting from that response. So you see that emphasis on really this downtown center development, and I think that's been a theme we've heard throughout, is revitalization going forward on that. And Lauren can always interrupt me if there's anything else I'm forgetting in this, but going through these and continuing, the next one is with a focus a little bit more on transportation and multimodal connectivity, and where are transportation improvements needed. This is something we wanted to sort of get a feel of what people thought. Where are the greatest needs within the town? And we had the 4 dots again, yellow for vehicular needs and improvements, blue for bicycle facilities or improvements, green for pedestrian, and red for transit buses, that side of it. And you can see here from the graphic, and like I said, we do have the standalone that's a little bigger map for people to see, of where people were putting those dots and where they see some of the needs for facilities or improvements. So that's something we can go back and look at what's in the current plan or in the current master plan as well, and how we can be incorporating those elements and working to get improvements in those various areas. And I wasn't going to walk through all those areas today. Those will be in the elements of the plan as we put the draft chapters together, but we're using this as the basis to develop those pieces. And then the next part was about economic development. This is where would you like to see economic development? And really, this came into that focus into the downtown area. You see a lot of that with the dots that are here. A couple comments there that we wanted to highlight were, and we heard this even in the early meetings we had through the survey and other stuff, about the need for a grocery store. Continues to come up as one of the major things we heard. But also wanting to see revitalization, but not a lot of growth. So it's an interesting element to think in that balance between redevelopment, revitalization, but not really seeing a expansion in the growth of some of the development.
I just want to point out one funny thing. It looks like someone thinks there needs to be economic development at Jim Brown's house. Is there? See the lone blue dot out there?
This was supposed to be anonymous.
And as part of that, we presented as well the Fisher Avenue project, and to get any feedback associated with that. And we got a lot of feedback during those efforts in those categories from the transportation side about pedestrian access, multimodal connectivity options, ways to really beautify and do community improvements as part of that on a streetscape and other side, accessibility, consideration of dedicated bike lanes, and then you see that, of course, always safety is always first and most important there. Even though it's on the bottom of the list, it's always high in our focus, and that growth development and that controlled development and growth as part of it, so that you can maintain what is done. And then it was fun. We did do a fun activity to try and engage the young members of the community, and they prepared some things or gave their thoughts, and a couple things that they highlighted there were improving the sidewalks and crosswalks around the elementary school, and this issue of slower speeds in the neighborhoods, slowing cars down, making sure it's safe when they're playing, etc. So that's a quick, I know I'm hitting it pretty quick on the items. I know we sent this out to you all. We did put a 2-page summary together as well that was included with your packet. It's not up on the screen, but just for your information, it's a little more written out of specific elements that were highlighted from the comments received. And it's related to transportation, pedestrian access, multimodal improvements. This is really the beautification, community improvements, accessibility, any bike lanes, growth and safety, the elements that were sort of listed there with the Fisher Avenue project as well, and sort of those elements. So you see specific comments that were given there, and a little more specific locations, and highlight some of the things that were, dotted or other things as part of the effort.
Yeah, I like some of the additions, comments that people had on this.
That was great, and we were really pleased with the participation and the involvement. Like I said, we were a little nervous going into it when we heard the weather forecast. Unfortunately, we couldn't. We were even going to have a person playing music and stuff and try and draw people. We had to cancel that just for concern of equipment. But we were really pleased at the turnout we got from the town and the feedback. And as you guys know, as you're working towards preparing the plan, hopefully that starts to guide the chapters in the direction that we're hearing with the community and yourselves. Mm-hmm. And then as we get feedback on the plan itself, hopefully many of those are already addressed up front and not having to be added in as we move forward.
Yeah. No, it was a good time, and your crew did a great job setting up the way they displayed they had string with little clothespins holding up little. It looked very, very country, but fun looking, and it started a lot of good conversation. So I didn't know what it was going to be like. I thought we'd break up in groups and be more formal, but this was good. It was informal, but people opened up and started good conversations. I thought it was really well done. Thank you.
I want to thank Lauren and them. Like I said, I may have helped in some of the planning, but I missed the event itself, unfortunately. But
no, Lauren did great, and she kind of opened things up and got people talking. People were a little shy, just kind of looking at things, and she would go around and give people a clue, like, hey, what do you think about this and all that stuff.
Well,
So
we've
it's good.
found in our different experiences, you can have the formal settings like this, and you're only going to get certain people who are comfortable speaking in
Yeah.
front of a group. And that's why we like to do this type of event, because we really want to keep it informal. We want to hear what you really want to say. We still have the website up and stuff, the town site and stuff, for people to continue to provide their comments throughout the process. And, we want to encourage that as we move forward, to continue to get that input and feedback, because we know you're listening, we're listening as part of the team, and really wanting to get that feedback so that we can really set a good vision moving forward for the next 10 years.
Yeah, I'm really happy. I thought this was great. I don't know if you have any comments.
No, I have to agree with you. The event was well done, well planned. I think that the information is really interesting. I have some follow-up questions, but like specifically, I thought it was very interesting that number one was economic growth and number two was basically infrastructure. And then to follow up that, people said that they wanted to enhance the economy, but they didn't want to, physically grow. So in my mind, I'm like, well, what does that actually mean? So does that mean infilling businesses? Does it mean, I even saw here someone was talking about fines for leaving empty spaces, empty commercial spaces. Like if you didn't rent them, then leaving it empty would be some sort of fee. I don't know. But I want to hear more about the ideas of how we promote our economic base without necessarily bringing, expanding our footprint, if that makes sense. How do we infill what's already here? So. But again, it was a wonderful event.
Yeah. Martin, do you have anything you want to add?
No, I'm glad that you guys are pleased with the turnout. I wasn't sure, it was really well run and it was, I think that it was creative and it got people engaged. And, I thought the turnout was decent and I was curious what your feedback was going to be on that. Having done a bunch of these yourself, and it sounds like you were pleased with the turnout, so that's great.
Yeah.
Everyone from Wallace Montgomery did a great job and it went off really well. And people I know that attended all thought the same thing. Very complimentary of it. So thanks for you.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll echo Ray's comments. Going into it, we were nervous with the weather, and we did have a fairly brief burst of pretty hard rain there. So I know some of the papers that were hung up got a little damp, but I think everyone, just kind of rolled with the punches there and continued to just circulate inside the tent, going to the different stations. So even with that, I think that we really did get a good turnout as far as that was concerned, and in particular coming out of more of the isolation that we've been in with the pandemic. I think this is probably one of the first larger gatherings that may have occurred. So it was very promising to see people coming out and asking questions, giving input, things like that. And I just have to note on my screen here, I've got the screen with the DIY budget up, and people were so interested in that activity that we had to cut more of the play money out so that they could use it to participate. So it was just great to see how engaged everyone was as that event moved forward. And just sort of to circle back to the question about promoting economic base without expanding the footprint, I think you really hit the nail on the head with looking at how we can promote infill development or look at the existing areas where there is already development, particularly in that downtown area. That may mean looking at zoning regulations and seeing what might be possible to encourage more commercial, and particularly more commercial that can be reached on foot. I think that combination is something that we were hearing that people are very interested in. So either being able to walk or bike to the downtown area, and then sort of walk around and visit different places, or if they do have to drive, driving once, parking, and then being able to circulate in that area. Those are definitely things that we're going to be exploring a little bit more as we continue working on the chapters themselves.
And I think one of the things to highlight there, just keeping in context of what a comprehensive plan and the intent of the plan, we like to include and work with you of a list of implementation items for things to be working on over the next 10 years. So you may say in the plan, we want this is what we're looking for, but you may put things, you won't always have the answer at the time the plan's put together. But the intent with that implementation matrix is to say, these are items we don't want to forget that we want to work on over the next 10 years. And, so let's have that so that they can be your future agenda items and meetings like this to make them move forward. Because you're not going to have all the answers at the time the plan's together. It's just not, you can't have all the ordinance changes. You can't have all, the things needed. But it could say, we'd like to identify incentive, disincentive measures in order to encourage infill of economic development or something like that. You may not know what those measures are 100% at that time, but you at least have it in the plan to say this is something we want to do as a group moving forward over the next 10 years. So that hopefully by the time you get to the next update, you can say, we did this.
Yeah.
So just to keep that in context for everyone, it's not, like I said, all the solutions won't be there in the plan, but what you'd like to see and maybe a direction for moving forward can be in that plan.
Excellent. Yeah, I think things are moving smoothly with this plan. We're not rushing it, and I think you guys are doing a great job. What's next?
Well, the next step's now getting into the fun part, and that's the writing of the chapters.
Okay.
We've been moving forward and working with Wade and his team to start to pull some of the chapters. I know they're helping on the water resources and the environmental and sensitive areas part of it. We've been working, I think the first three we've been doing have been the housing, the transportation, and the community facilities pieces to get those drafts together. So that we can then start putting in front of the planning commission so that you guys can see it, give us your thoughts. And then as we revise them, then, down the road, they become available for public review and comment on that side of it. And there's a total of, I think it's like 9 chapters that go with it, with the elements that were in the plan. So we'll be working on the pieces, getting them to you and starting to pull that together as the full plan, moving forward. We're going to work closely with Wade to get that schedule together
Okay.
so that you sort of see our timeline moving forward, so that we all agree that this is our goals to be here. Here's what we got to do to get there and the
Okay.
time frame. As we first came on board for this effort, it was to help with the outreach, get some feedback. Now that we're helping a little more with the actual development of the plan itself, we want to get that formal schedule together. So over the next month, we'll be getting that schedule to come back with you guys on the approach, what our timeline is, and probably getting a couple of those draft chapters out to you to start initial review on.
So at our August meeting, we'll probably see a timeline.
Yeah, August meeting will
And-
be an update on the schedule and where we are on the some of the chapters.
All right, perfect.
Are there any more events coming up? I mean, it sounds to me like we are moving out of the phase of soliciting input and information. I mean, not to say that people can't continue
Right.
to give input, but that we are moving beyond that into like actual,
We are, but we also have 3 interviews I think that we need to do. I'm not sure if those were scheduled yet or not. Maybe you can shed some light on that.
Yeah, I don't think, Lauren, you can probably speak to those more on the interview. Can you speak to that, Lauren? Or did I lose her?
Sorry, can you repeat that question? If there's
the-
any additional outreach?
The 3 interviews we have coming up?
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. We are just working to get those scheduled, and we will be having discussions with the committee and the additional input into the plan drafting. And of course, if you remember back to the very beginning of this process, when the Planning Commission had various stakeholders come in and give presentations and give their initial feedback, we've got those write-ups as well, incorporating that information as we move forward. And as Ray said, we hope that if any members of the public continue to have any comments or anything like that, that they're able to relay that information to us. We do want to continue to receive input. Of course, there will be more focus points for that when the drafts get released more publicly, so there's a physical document to provide feedback on. But in the interim, if there are any thoughts or ideas or something like that, we do hope that you continue to send those in to us.
We got very good feedback through the survey when that was released. The number of responses was great. I think the thing we want to keep open when you talk about that for additional input, particularly public input, when we're working on these chapters, particularly working with you all as the Planning Commission, if you're seeing things or having some questions, I mean, just like you mentioned earlier about how do we have the economic growth but limit, that you might want additional feedback, there is an opportunity for us to, we've done this with some other groups before where we did it like, I'll call it a question of the week or question of the month or something like that, saying our focus this month is transportation. So we have, 2 or 3 questions on transportation we might want to put on the website and get some additional feedback off of as we're looking at the chapters. So something might come up in your mind saying, boy, I wish I heard more on this. We didn't get much on this. I think that's a good way we could get some additional feedback as well. In addition to what Wade had mentioned with the stakeholder interviews, where we're actually meeting with certain specific stakeholders who have vested interest. But this is a way to get some public outreach. So if something does come up, we can always put a question out there and see what additional comments we can get.
Cool.
But that's usually been the most effective as we're sort of in this drafting chapter phase.
Yeah. You guys are doing great work. Really appreciate it. And thanks for the time today and the report. And so I guess we'll see you next month with the timeline.
We'll give you a timeline and we'll get have us all together on what that schedule will be for the group. And like I said, the big thing is starting to get in front of you guys some of these, I'll call them preliminary drafts. We're hearing things, but we need to hear from you and get your comments. So we'll have that coordination with the commission, and then prepare that as a version that we then can start sharing with the public moving forward.
Cool. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
Thank you, Laura.
No, we're glad to be helping. Like I said, it was great
thank you for
turnout.
joining
We love
us.
the turnout. That's what we want.
Let me see. Yep,
Thank you
thanks.
very much.
All right, anybody else waiting? Nope, nobody else waiting. All right, so our last item on old business is the food truck ordinance. And do we have some people who want to talk about the food truck? Okay. So, Wade, you want to go over what you shared with us, the draft, I guess, of
Sure,
the
so we
ordinance?
took some of the conversations that we had last time and some of the points to tune up, and
I'm gonna, is it okay if I just pull this back so I can look at the comments?
sure,
So,
sure. So we added a couple of different things, just to clarify certain things of it. One was just to make sure that it was just to operate within the boundaries of Poolsville, number one. So, and that was to take place, we talked about somebody, like a catering truck that was parked outside across the street, that wouldn't be caught up in this type of an ordinance. So that's addressed in a couple different ways. One, that is to operate, not just park. So you can park somewhere, but you have to operate. And to Tom's point, what he had said earlier, maybe that should be operate/park for 4 days. I get that, that's probably a good point. I did add the administrative fee. And where this goes, this is all just, no certain order, so. that's something that we hadn't had in before, but it will be taken up as all things permitted due for the commissioners and as part of this fee schedule. And a lot of our stuff is actually written exactly like that. The hour one, and we went back more from days to hours. And in hearing the conversations and listening to it again, it was just easier and seemed like it was bringing everybody consensus together was just to have it allowable for 4 days at a time and not limit the hours except for the duration, 6 a.m. to 9 p.m.
How come not, does the ice cream stay till 10 sometimes?
And so they probably do, but really they should be completely done and out of there by 10 o'clock. And so how long does it take them to clean up and do all their stuff? It's gonna
okay.
make noise past 10. So that was, we could certainly discuss this, but this is why I pulled it back to 9.
Okay. So they could operate till 9, but then have hour to clean up
Right.
and be out, okay.
And then E down here, where I say permitted trucks can be parked at a location. Permitted, because that goes back up to the top, that speaks to the temporary use permit and what that allows. So like a truck, like across the street, could be parked there for catering purposes and then leave the site and be back into the parking place. That would not count because it's not a permitted, because it doesn't have to be permitted because it's not operating. So
Okay.
it's kind of a roundabout, but it grabs it all.
It's funny, when I first started reading this, I was thinking of Poolsville Day, right? And I was like, oh no, gotta be parked on pavement and da-da-da. And then I strolled all the way to the bottom and you've addressed it with,
Yeah.
doesn't pertain to town-sponsored events.
So, go ahead, yeah.
Well, the permanent truck can be parked at a location no more than 4 days a week. I get that, but what would prevent someone from like parking at the old Discovery and then moving across the street and parking at, like, could they not? It doesn't say.
They can do that, but see, they are a licensed vehicle also. And so if they can legally park somewhere but not operate, as in.
Well, but that's my question, like,
We-
it seems ambiguous to me that like you could park 4 days at one spot and then move and park 3 days at another spot and still just like rotate around and work 7 days a week. Like, how is that
I think we would
addressed in here?
want to address, you probably can only get one permit. See, like your example would be.
Okay, so it's a-
Discovery would have to pull a permit.
Okay,
And
so
they
the
would-
permit is site specific.
That's why I think we would want it, so
Okay.
that we don't want it sitting there for more 4 days
Yeah.
a week, and we don't want it operating for more 4 days. But if you want to drive it across the street and park it and lock it, no big deal. You just can't operate your food truck in that location because you wouldn't be permitted.
It makes sense then if you put a restriction on operation and location and not just operation within city limits. Okay,
Because the permit has to have a site plan.
Okay.
Like how you're doing it, so you can't just move around, or we would know.
there's a lot of parts to this particular. Okay, please proceed. Thank you for clarifying.
And the more you talk about it, the more things that come up.
Martin, do you have any comments on the draft that Wade presented to us?
The only thing that, looking it over, the thing where, I'm just thinking about existing food trucks, and I keep coming back to Tony's Barbecue. You can only be parked somewhere for 4 days at a time. Am I reading that right?
Yes.
So I wonder how that's going to affect, like, Tony's. I want, like, the Brewster's truck seems to be there, like, more than 4 days often. Is that something, I think if I remember correctly at the last meeting, that was kind of a strategic thing. Is that right, Wade?
Exactly, the brick and mortars have to go through a lot of different hoops and do a lot of things and pay taxes and things, and so it's kind of even the playing field, if you will.
Right. Okay. Good. Yeah, that's the only question I had.
So, how do we want to handle it? Do we want to,
Well, before we go any farther, there was an interesting thing brought up in the comments about what about a produce? So that was interesting. So would this be limited to a food truck, or would you tie in and say maybe, all mobile vending?
well, so this is called the food truck ordinance.
I know, but I'm asking a follow-up
The
because,
intent was, so I don't know,
I mean, if you're buying, you could eat your apple off of your produce thing, but they're selling bulk items for you to take away. And the food truck is selling you an item that is intended to be consumed there, which is why they have to have trash cans and things like that, more like a restaurant. So when we did this, we kind of thought it was food truck equals restaurant, as in preparation, as in type of thing, and that it really was vending was secondary type of thing.
Personally, for me, I think I draw the line at taxes, right? So like a food truck would pay taxes on prepared food like a restaurant, whereas if you were buying groceries and an apple, you wouldn't pay taxes on groceries.
And you could have the person drive around and sell tools, the tool truck.
Or
He's-
windows.
Right, I mean, so we're not trying to get to vendors.
Okay.
Because we have a vendor's license we could do. We're trying to regulate people that are creating a restaurant to eat there. The question I can't believe nobody's asked is, what about the Good Humor Man? Right? 'Cause Good Humor Man,
Are those still around?
we'll pretend they are, okay?
Have you
Not in
seen
your
gas
neighborhood,
prices?
apparently. But
You see, Brian, not here, but.
they would be not, they wouldn't be regulated as either because they're driving
They're
around
mobile.
and they're not setting in a spot and they're not going to be in certain hours and they hand you a prepackaged, here you go, you don't eat it or.
So I would consider Good Humor similar to
Schwann's.
Uber Eats or Grubhub.
Schwann's or those things. So we're not intending to, yeah.
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 So we're not trying to catch like produce stands because that's a vending type of deal.
Yeah.
Unless that is a problem too, but they don't necessarily compete with the restaurants, which is what we're trying to.
Yeah.
No one's gonna compare an apple to a taco.
No.
That would be impossible.
I think you have someone who would like to speak.
Oh, yeah. Oh, please come up to the microphone.
And
And if
also,
you-
please give your name and address when you sit to speak.
I'm Tony. Come on in.
Oh, hi, Tony.
I'm with Tony's Barbecue. I own the truck.
Yeah.
And thank you for, having everybody here and issuing this, taking care of this thing. But just had a few questions, actually, I wanted to ask. I've just kind of been listening and just wanted to know why is it that you guys want to only do 4 days and not few extra days or whatever it is, the 4 days. And then as far as the licensing and everything goes, I just kind of want to let you guys know that with the food truck licensing, we do have to go through a lot of things that restaurant owners have to go pretty much through. I had to go to classes for food safety. I had to go pay a bunch of fees and everything for the whole year. And just to let you guys know something else, it is every year. We do have to pay fees every year to maintain the licensing and everything. So we have to present, what is it? Sorry, I never spoken for.
Yeah.
It's called the House of Plans. So every item that you have on the menu has to be itemized to the specific to, like everything has to be itemized. So there's no way that I can just start selling tacos and then doing barbecue and then doing this and that. So everything, there's a lot of things that goes on as far as having to run a food truck, like if the permit.
So you can't just change the menu and start selling a totally
if you
different.
do like specials or something, you can, but you cannot like if I have the items that because all that gets inspected by
Okay.
Montgomery County,
So you can't be the barbecue man one day and then put a new sign up and call yourself Taco Man
You cannot.
the next day.
No.
Okay.
So, but if I just wanted to just serve, let's just say something as a special that, on the weekend or whatever it is, I can do something like that, but I cannot have it in my menu. If I want to have it in my menu, it has to go through the House of Plan,
Okay.
which, I mean, we I was just kind of wondering why is it that you guys had decided just to do 4 days and then we have to move the truck and then all this other stuff and so.
I can give you it's going to be a technical answer, but I can give you the answer. So right now, food trucks aren't allowed
Right.
at all. And if you wanted to allow them under your current law, it would be under the zoning law. And you would have to apply for a special exception because they're incidental to the principal use on the lot. And so if somebody went through the zoning procedures and said, I want to have the trailer out here all the time, and that's going to be where I'm going to serve things and things like that, there's a mechanism for the property owner to do that. And it's involved because you got to have a hearing before the Board of Zoning Appeals and provide a lot of this type of information. But then once you get that, you can keep that. I mean, it's
Right.
you can operate every day. It wouldn't be a food truck under that
Right.
anymore. So knowing that it's difficult to go through the Board of Zoning Appeals, and it's expensive and it takes time, the thought was, could we have a simpler process that was more administrative? And that's hence the whole food truck. And to distinguish it from somebody that could be there all the time, we said, well, they got to be there less time than all the time. And, you know, you could have any time. You could make whatever you want. But the thought would be, if they are permanent in that spot for what you would ever consider permanent to be, then they're more like a fixture on the land and they should be regulated by zoning,
Okay.
as opposed to an administrative procedure. So it could be more than 4, less than 4, and I think I talked to your attorney a while back, Mr. Hayden, before he passed away. I think he's the one that talked to me, maybe 2 years ago.
He's more of my landlord's attorney.
Okay,
Steve
and
Goldberg, yeah.
we had that conversation of why do we have to do anything, and the thought is, well, if you just want to be on that property forever in a mobile type of setting, then you should probably go through the zoning process to do that. Because that's more involved with the neighbors, everybody gets kind of a say at that point. And there's a board that approves it to say, yeah, that's okay, just, you could be there 6 months out of the year and don't have to
Right.
move. But if you didn't want to go through that formal process, this is a lot simpler, and that's the reason.
Well, to get permits, like with Montgomery County, because when I tried to, applying for permits for Poolsville, I was told that there wasn't any, so, and before even coming to Poolsville, I didn't even know that I had to get, Poolsville's not part of Montgomery County.
Right.
So I went and got all my permits, everything from Montgomery County, and they issued them to me without a problem, even though I had the Fisher Avenue address and everything. But even that, they have different types of licensing that they issue. One of them is zoning, and one of them you can drive around. One of them is just for events. It just depends what you want to do.
Right.
And with that one, it was just more, you just pay more for fees and stuff like that, and they issued, for me to be here and everything. So, but since
And that's
yeah,
why, since Poolsville controls its own zoning,
right,
what happened with your business in particular was eventually all those licenses came here, or some of them came
Right.
here for the town to sign off. And they asked the town to sign off on a use and occupancy permit
right,
to say, the town says everything is good.
Yeah.
And that was the question that raised us, is how do you sign a use and occupancy permit for something that is not allowed? So we said, well, let's look at this. So the only way to make it allowed is to go through the zoning process,
okay,
which at the time, the landlord didn't want to didn't do it at all. So we said, well, how can we accommodate you without going through the zoning process? And I guess that's the question back to you, is when we started this, I don't know, however many months ago, it was, this is a way to get around our own zoning. You could change your zoning and permit it, but if you permit it, then that means it could be anywhere in the zone. So we said, well, that's not going to work. A special exception or conditional use is what we would want. Well, then you have to go to the BZA, which is a
Yeah.
process. And
Yeah.
we said, well, we don't want to do that to the ice cream guy, and
Yeah.
he comes in just for the season and type of thing. So that's the reason it is the way it is. It could still be adjusted. That's what you can look at, or the Board of Commissioners can too. But that's how we got the way it is.
So, like, how many days do you currently operate?
I'm here 5 days, and then the 2 days, I shop, prep, and we do the rest of the stuff. But I'm
So-
operating 5 days.
Wednesday through Sunday, or?
We're closed Sundays and Mondays, and then I operate from Tuesday to Saturday.
Okay.
Yeah,
And what hours?
11 to 7.
Okay.
Usually try to do lunchtime before lunch starts, and then just do lunchtime and probably dinner time. And like you said earlier, it takes about an hour or so to clean up afterwards, and So, yeah, we're here.
So if you could have a say, you would say, can you change it to 5 days?
To be quite honest with you, it's not an easy business to be in. It's a lot of hard work, a lot of hours spent, between, shopping, making the food, and, running the business. Start, in the mornings, I have to be here 3 hours earlier just so I can start, warming up stuff and getting stuff ready. So I'm working 12, 13 hours a day,
Yeah.
every day. It's not just, even on those 2 days that I'm not open, I'm still working, but away from family and everything. So, it's a tough business to be in. So if, we start getting, and this is how I feel, support my family. This is how, this is how I make my living. So if we start cutting days and hours and stuff like this, so it's just affecting,
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's just, if it's just that 1 day or 2 days, I mean, I don't know, I was thinking, what the difference is between 4 days or 5 days. I mean, what's just a day here or there or whatever, but, and the hours, it's, summertime, we have longer days, so,
Yeah.
I mean, August is just dead everywhere. So August is just a terrible month for any business, I think. So we we're limited, trying to make our money, at certain times of the month and certain days, July, June and July come around. June, we have all the events and you have all the pools opening, you have all the graduation parties and stuff like this. So if we start cutting back hours and stuff, I'm just going to be losing a lot of money, or any other truck or any other businesses, but yeah, that was just my thing. It was like trying to make ends meet and trying to work, a few hours here and there will definitely be a hit to the business. So
Yeah.
that was the only concern.
So maybe, this is just thought, because we're
Yeah.
still in the very preliminary stages. We were met with a problem that we had to regulate. And ideally, what you'd like to do is just have it sit there, like a restaurant, like an outside, but it doesn't have any seating inside, and you just prepare your food and do your thing. Maybe we should examine, as an alternative or an additional alternative, looking at the zoning law to put some kind of provision that you could have that type of facility there. We're not saying it's a bad idea. It's just that if you want to be a food truck like the ice cream people that roll in and roll out and they can move around and they can go to other places, that's a food truck. Okay? And we're trying to say food trucks are okay in certain zones. But if you're trying to say this is going to be a fixture on the land, like I'm not going to find you anywhere else except there.
Right.
I mean, that's where maybe we should try to examine the zoning laws for people like that. Because they're operating an outside restaurant.
Yep.
However you want to.
And you could join the
Well,
chamber.
it is pretty much a restaurant.
Right. I mean, that's what I'm saying is
Yeah,
that
it's
if I needed to find you, I don't have to look around like
Right.
my Poke Bowl guy might be at the bowling alley one
Right.
day and the next day. You're here, you're
Right.
at that time. So maybe we should examine what do we do for people who don't want to be a food truck. I know you're mobile, I know you got a
Right.
license by food truck, but in Poolsville, it might be called
Stand.
something else, food stand or something like that, where it's there all the time. And then you go through a process. It'll still be a process where you have to make sure it's okay with the neighbors and all that. But right now, it would be like we're forcing it through a process that's not designed for it.
Yeah.
And the BZA would have a fit, right?
Yeah.
But if we could look at those and say, hey, this isn't a bad idea. But to, Mr. Kettler's point earlier, we don't want people to do that everywhere because.
You don't want
then
to
they-
open up Pandora's box.
Jay, would become an accessory building.
Right. We really want people to use the principal building
Yes.
on a building for the principal use. And if it's that as a restaurant, that would be great. But I get it. Those are expensive. Those are problems. There's old buildings. There's not enough room. So maybe there's a middle ground.
So, would we do two things then? Would we finish writing the food truck ordinance? But in his case, he wouldn't fill out a food truck application. We would go through this process of changing the zoning to allow permanent food stands or trucks.
Yeah, don't worry about how we get there, but that's where we would do.
But we
is-
need to do two
we would
things,
do-
right?
I was envisioning if we just did this, that you're going to enact, you're not you, but the commissioners would enact another section of the code and labeled food trucks. And it'll be completely administrative, meaning the penalties for violating that are administrative, not zoning.
Okay.
There's two different ways to do that. And then we would change the zoning ordinance to define food truck and say it can operate in these zones, and then you'd go to the code where it says food truck and you'd do it. So that we have 99%. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
gonna get much better. We're gonna start at 0 on the other one and say, well, how could we do it for people who don't want to operate as a mobile food truck? They're
Yeah.
gonna operate something else, and figure out what we could do for that. Or whether you wanna do it. I mean, we'll figure it out. It's just, how do you wanna do that?
I have a question, and this is silly, but your food truck is mobile, right?
It is.
So while I appreciate that limiting you down to 4 days instead of 5, it creates some sort of hardship. I'm not unsympathetic to that. Why is it not that you couldn't find a secondary location to also operate so that you would still have 5 days? I mean, it is mobile by nature. So in theory, you could work 3 or 4 days here in Poolsville and then move the truck to, say, the Shell station across from Harris Teeter, actually have a whole new group of clients, still maintain your 5 days without having an issue.
Well, when I first started, to be very honest with you, I was not expecting to be in one location all the time. And then when I came to Poolsville, to be honest, it was such a beautiful community for me, like, to be here. And the people were wonderful, everybody. I mean, everybody was so supportive and nice and everything. So I kind of built a relationship with all my customers here right now. So if I'm not here,
Yeah.
if I'm closed for a day or two, my phone is ringing. We want to place order. I'm like, I'm not. And then you upset your customers that way, and then they don't want to come back anymore. So I'm kind of stuck now. I'm like, I cannot. I totally understand. Like, I'm trying to figure out a way to do this too. Like, I'm not trying to, like.
Right, I'm not
Yeah.
trying, like I said, I'm not trying
Yeah.
to be unsympathetic. I
Yeah,
just,
But it's just the.
I get that,
I
because he'd
remember,
have to
I
pay
remember
someone
the
else rent.
Reuben,
He'd
the
have-
Reuben place.
That guy goes all over the county.
I
though.
know, but I just remember how excited people were when he was here like 2 days a week, and people were like lining up down the block. And so I wonder if not to some degree, if you had like, I am set to be in Poolsville from, Wednesday through Saturday, and then you did 2 days elsewhere, if those 2 days wouldn't make the heart grow fonder.
I mean, I wouldn't mind doing that. Trust
I'm
me.
just
I-
asking.
I don't mind it at all.
But I think he likes pools. The customers like him.
I mean, Poolsville is.
We have Quagmire, I guess. You can't get the permit that the county needs because we can't sign off on it.
Right.
One of the first thoughts was to do the food truck ordinance, but it doesn't sound like you want to operate like a food truck. You kind of want to operate like a permanent.
Well, here's the thing, like, what we were talking about earlier, like bringing businesses and bringing stuff in and all this stuff, like, little by little, I mean, I fell in love with this place so much, like, I'm thinking about moving into the building now.
Yeah.
So eventually, little by little, I have to, do it the right way, get all the permits and all that stuff. So eventually, one little thing can turn into a bigger thing and bring more, start bigger, create more jobs for people, even in town or whatever it is. So, I mean, this is why I'm saying, like, building a relationship with the community, building a relationship with the customers and everything, it just opens new doors to everything. If I just start hopping around here and there, I'm just, it's
John,
just-
I have a question for you then. So, in thoughts of how to get around this, and not that I'm making suggestions for loopholes, but you mentioned that it would be an accessory structure.
Could be.
Could be. How difficult would it be to say, build a outdoor seating area covered that is an accessory building and then permit it that way as an accessory use building, even though the kitchen is inside of a portable building? If you,
Depends on if it's open on all sides, 3 sides, if it's just a cover, it gets into a building code issue.
I wondered how difficult that would be.
Montgomery County,
Oh.
To a point that you'd have to go into property at the present time has a series of picnic benches underneath.
The pergola.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now, if they were to put up a temporary screening over top, but nothing more than that, that would be a fabric type screening.
I mean, you just said accessory unit, and that made me think that maybe there is some sort of avenue in order for it to be
Yeah, it could possibly.
permanently affixed without actually being permanently affixed.
So a quick question.
Yes.
I know that right now there's a catering application being applied for at Mr. Goldberg's. Are you gonna be cooking inside there? Is that where you're planning to cook?
Some stuff, yes.
Okay.
Oh, that could change it.
And so you're gonna do some cooking in there. Are you doing cooking in your trailer?
I am doing cooking in the trailer, but for every truck, you have to have a commercial kitchen.
Right.
So you have to be linked to a commercial kitchen.
Right. What I'm trying to go down this road here. So the services is, if the service was just taking, if the cooking was taking place in the building, and all you're doing is servicing out there in the structure, and then it may not need to, it's just a form of servicing out there in the structure itself. You see what I'm saying?
Let me jump in here real quick. So
Sorry.
I think we really complicate this whole thing.
Right.
Because we really came up with 4 days. It wasn't that it was really arbitrary. We looked at several different models and just came up with, okay, let's get some hours, and we just plugged them in. 5 could be your number. It's okay. I mean, I'm just throwing that out there.
But would he have to move, or could he just not operate the 2 days?
Well, that's something.
That's the thing. I mean, moving the truck is not an easy thing. I
Yeah,
have to
'cause where you gonna
unpack,
put it?
I have to pack. I have to empty my grease, like my frying stuff. I mean, it's just so much work just to do.
But you have gone, I mean, I see your truck gone sometimes.
Yeah, I
You're
do.
vending
Yeah,
other places.
but right now, like, it was so hard. Like, for the past 3-4 months, I was looking for workers, which I couldn't find. I couldn't find one person to help me. So now that the kids are out of school, I have somebody to help me, and it's kind of easier for me to move the truck now, because I do have that help. But once school starts again, like, if I can't find it, like, it's just I cannot. I'm working 12, 13 hours. It's hard for me to unload, load, and unpack and pack and do all this stuff. So if I don't have to operate, like, that's fine. I can close the doors and not. But if I have to move the truck just for 2 days, it's just kind of, just doesn't kind of make sense to me.
So is
to be
that
honest
something we
with you,
could,
but-
we could actually talk about? I don't know. I mean, so a lot of times the leaving them in one place was for areas like in DC and stuff. I mean, I looked at so many different models when we were going through this, they can't have them on the street and all this different stuff, so.
Yeah, so-
But I don't know if we want that.
Does Martin want to talk? Martin, you have thoughts?
No, I want to keep listening, but I do like the notion of maybe having a separate, possibly a separate thing for something like this. It's kind of a unique situation.
I'll get on a little soapbox here. I know at the Montgomery College, we started a brand new class that's going to start in the fall. We bought a food truck, and we're training students how to operate a food truck, because nowadays, someone like Tony, it's almost impossible to open up a restaurant. It's so expensive in Montgomery County. The rent is so high that this is the only way small startups can kind of start. And unless you're a corporation, corporations like Dunkin' and McDonald's, they can easily rent something.
Right.
But
And they can
there's
take
an
a loss for
initiative
5
by the
years.
county and by Montgomery College to support small business people. And I would like to be, I think the town should be helping to help encourage small business in terms of, so whatever we can do, that's just my little soapbox of.
One of the things that we wrestled with when because we didn't want to have to do any of this. We wanted to sign the permit and be done. Nobody wants to do this. Is how is that not a restaurant? If you look at the definition, it serves food from inside. It doesn't serve it to take away, that you can eat it on the premises, on the property. How is that not a restaurant? So now I have to look at restaurant zoning and restaurant requirements, which I didn't want to do.
Yeah.
Okay? Because when I do that, that creates a whole nother problem, because we can deal with restaurants.
Food
And-
traps, everything, I mean, just.
Right, so it creates a whole issues of things. So then you say, well, If it's an accessory use, that works fine if the principal use is a catering business. But if the principal use is the Sunoco garage, this accessory use isn't compatible with it. It's completely separate. So I can't really just say, it's an accessory use. So we wanted to be able to do something completely different. And, you know, I'm still to the point where you have to wrestle with, if you have a place that's open 5 days a week and closed 2 days a week, how is that different than a building that's a restaurant? And if it's the same, even though there's different permits you got to get, and I mean, it's a different way of operating completely. Do we want to distinguish between those? How would you distinguish it? Why would you distinguish it? And then what's the ramifications? Because you might be able to do restaurant use, I don't know this, but in more places or in less places in town.
Mm-hmm.
And then is that when you start competing with the fixed people? Because we just talked about vacant storefronts, and we might find people if they're vacant, but we're going to allow people to open, in essence, the same type of things in the parking lot.
Yeah.
And I think they're great. I mean, I just think that we need to at least have a cohesive way of dealing with it. If I had like a magic wand, I'd be saying, hey, we should run you through the zoning process and see how we can get you to get your zoning certificate to operate exactly like you are right there. And you're a food truck in Montgomery County's eyes, but not in ours. And you're good. But the ice cream guy, he doesn't have any intent of staying here. He goes
Correct.
seasonal. Well, he's not allowed to be there either unless
Yeah.
we do something for food trucks. So.
So I thought, and I think, Martin, if we do the two paths, work on the ordinance and the, or are you saying that's not a good way to go?
No, I'm thinking that, I mean, you always come up with the rule and then we get the exception, you know, the specific case, and now we're trying to design the rule to fit the case.
Yeah.
What I would
was
think
going to
is-
say, I think that these are separate. I
Right.
think that the ordinance is the ordinance, and we should look at that. And while I know that that will cause a hardship, then there's also the troubleshooting in order to figure out a viable, sustainable path for
Right.
you.
Right, that's, like, let's see what we can do to fix your individual problem, because your problem is a little different based on what you want to do than
Right.
the ice cream guy.
Right, I think
And I don't want to
this
figure out
ordinance is
for the ice cream either guy, you know, I want to have a one-size-fits-all and then deal with the exception.
I'm not looking for any special kind of treatment or anything like that, but all I want to make sure is I try to operate the right way, make sure I do everything the right way, and everybody, you know, so everybody's happy. I'm not trying to cause any trouble.
Well, no,
or
it's
cause
not,
any
and
kind of
that's
thing.
the benefit
Right.
of a small town, is that you're able to make these decisions
Right.
and say, hey, this is gonna have a problem for you, maybe there's another way. I'm not
Right.
promising there's another way, I'm just saying is that's how we got here, so maybe we should back up a few steps to see where this path led, and still do what we're doing here.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was coming to the same conclusion, I think, in parallel with you, that, like you said, you are the exception. We should look at the rules in a more general sense of, like, you know, the Reuben guy and
Yeah.
the ice cream guy, and then also maybe see if there is another path that would allow for this small business. And I even get the feeling that, and maybe this is me just wishful thinking, but that you are using this as maybe a stepping into a more permanent solution here in Poolsville. Like,
Absolutely.
you're using the food truck in order to establish and kind of, like, you know, solidify yourself before moving into a more permanent situation.
Well, I didn't know how it was gonna go with starting this business, to be quite honest. I didn't know if it was gonna be a failure, if it was gonna be successful or whatnot. But thank God, you know, God willing, it started. You know, it's been great being here, and so it has led me to want to take more risks in, you know, as far as expanding it and getting into the building and maybe start not.
I have
We're
dreams
saying-
for you to be like, you know, the taco or the the Mexican grill. Like, you have the
Yeah.
food truck outside, but then you have a, like, permanent fixture
Right,
here.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, I would love to do that, but I mean.
But you're not
starting-
there yet, and I understand that.
Starting small was the thing for me, you know. I just wanted to make sure I don't, you know, bite off
Right, that
more
makes
than
sense.
I can chew. So it was like kind of the experience as well. Like, I was not doing this before. Like, I just kind of jumped into it during COVID and, you know, invested every single dime that I had into it and just started it. So it was like, okay, it's either sink or swim. So it's like, now it's, you know, little by little, I'm looking into kind of maybe moving it into the building and doing, you know, expanding it into a bigger thing, but I do, like, I'm here today just to make sure, you know, like, I understand all the rules and what we need to do for me to take the right steps and kind of go forward from here.
It was actually really good you came here, because it helped give us broader perspective and make sure we just didn't rush something through that would put us in a jam. So this is good.
Thank
It's
you.
good discussion and stuff.
Thank you guys for having us.
And we're months away from any result yet, so we're still that far away.
Absolutely. Well, I need, another thing was I just needed, Montgomery County is actually waiting for me to, you know, take something from you guys to them so I can. So that was another, yeah, that was another, issue.
So what do we, how do we, because we're not going to solve this tonight or next meeting,
Right.
or the meeting after that,
We
maybe.
do have miscellaneous temporary zoning.
We'll have to figure that, that's kind of beyond, I mean, I couldn't recommend they sign a UNO that doesn't comply with the law.
Okay.
So we'll have to figure something out to help you continue.
Thank you.
We all
Appreciate
know that, like, for, how long has that been going on? A year and a half, 2
it.
years?
I've been here almost, yeah, a year and a few
Right.
months, yeah.
And so our solution was we're just not gonna pay attention to it.
You
We're like, ignore this.
And hey, you know,
And
it's like
that's
the
what I was
policeman
afraid
letting
of. I
the
was-
speeders go by.
Yeah.
We're speeding by and we're not pulling people over,
Yeah.
but now, you know,
Right.
we'll figure something out.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate you guys.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
So I guess it's fair to say we're going to continue this discussion.
I do
Going
like
forward.
the changes that you've made and the direction that you're going, and I do think that we should separate this out into a general food truck ordinance and then special
Yeah,
exceptions.
yeah. Yep.
I take your discussion tonight, and of course, we're missing some members, but this is ready for prime time.
Yeah.
Because we're
Yeah.
gonna spend some more time putting it in the right order, in the right spot.
Yeah.
But we might not want to make it to happen, because there's an economy of trying to do them all at the same time,
Yeah.
until we come back to you with the other.
Okay.
Plus, you got your brethren who aren't here, so.
Did you want to provide some comment?
I wanted to sign in to show support for the chickens.
Oh, okay, cool.
Otherwise, there's no record of it, frankly. And his barbecue is great.
Yeah.
Chicken and barbecue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Barbecue chicken.
Yeah. And then we can't have roosters, though.
That's why I'm here. I'm here every night. Yeah.
Well, so any other business?
Okay, yeah. Get you working up for it, buddy.
You just pay by the hour, right?
There's a
By the
whole,
word, somebody.
as you were saying something, because there's so many moving parts to this. It's gonna
That's
be-
why we ignored it as long as we could.
I mean,
Yeah.
this thing has like, you even started over. You went through A through F and then started back at A and went
Yeah.
through E.
I thought that, right?
I mean, I personally think this is done.
That's like 11 things right there.
Yeah.
Subparts.
That his problem may just be a lack of guidance of coming through the system, saying, what you should do to get to your end result is this, and we may already have that in place.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know, that's the whole thing, so,
Yeah.
we're gonna work, we're gonna figure it out.
Any motions?
Oh, yeah. I got a motion to adjourn at 8:30. Martin?
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, appreciate it, everybody. Let me close down the Zoom.
I had us on live stream too. The phone started working.
Oh, you got it working?
Yes.
So how did you shut down the Zoom?